Chapter 5. Show me a story. What secrets are revealed in rock art? French archaeologist Henri Lot first saw the images scratched and painted onto the rocks at Tassili and Ager in the southeastern Sahara in 1934. The dazzling images stayed with him for 20 years until he returned on a research expedition. On closer inspection, he was even more excited. With at least 4,000 rock paintings and even more carvings, Tassili is one of the world's greatest collections of prehistoric art. The art dates from around 6000 BC to 1200 BC. David Lewis Williams, a leading expert on African rock art, examines a recently discovered painting in South Africa's Drakensberg Mountains. Rock art. 8500 BC to AD 1900. 9000 BC, 0, AD 2000. For thousands of years, artists around Tassili carved and painted vivid images on rocks. They made paints from sandstone, ochre, zinc oxide, white, and manganese oxide, black. In some areas, preparing ochre had its own ceremony. After heating the ochre, artists ground it up and added animal fat, egg yolk, or blood to make paint. They carried the paints in containers on their belts and applied them with animal tails, feathers, quills, or bones. When carving images into the rock, the artists considered how the shadows formed by the passage of the sun would affect their work. They also took into account the angles and curves on the rocks themselves. A changing land. When Henri Lot arrived in Tassili and Ager, it was a remote desert region, but around 9,000 years ago, it was a well-watered place where many people and animals lived. Its name means plateau of the rivers. The art there documents how people adapted as the rivers and lakes shrank and grasslands disappeared. By about 2,000 years ago, the land had become a desert. Hunting giant buffalo. Lot began the task of studying the rock art by dividing the works into 4 main periods, according to the most common styles and subjects. He named the earliest period the Roundhead era. Its paintings show people with featureless faces and round heads. Hunters chased giant buffalo, now extinct in Africa, as well as ostriches, antelopes, and other wild animals. They use bows, clubs, or axes, and some wear masks. The dates of this period are a subject of heated debate, but were probably 6000 BC to 4000 BC. The cattle herder period began about 5000 BC. Scenes of animal herding became common. So did pictures of people farming and doing daily tasks. Archaeologists have found human and cattle bones dating back to 4500 BC across the area. These finds confirm that people in the region at the time lived by herding cattle and were nomads. They had no settled home but moved from place to place. By about 1200 BC, horses began to appear in paintings, sometimes pulling chariots. The chariot images suggest that the artists of this horse period had contact with Eastern Mediterranean peoples because these people used such vehicles. At this time, the Sahara still had enough rainfall to sustain farming and herds of horses, but cattle were becoming more rare. The Camel period began around 100 BC with images of camels brought to Africa by the Romans and other desert animals. They showed that the land had become arid as it began turning into the desert it is today. Camels appeared in rock art beginning in the 1st century BC. This painting has been vandalized by being repeatedly hit with an object. Inside the minds of ancient cultures, excavated objects such as bones and pottery give archaeologists information about how ancient peoples lived their everyday lives. But rock art can give scientists a glimpse into the ways that they thought. How did our ancestors view the world? Scientists use techniques of a branch of archaeology known as cognitive archaeology to understand the beliefs that drove the behavior of ancient cultures. One way they do this is through studying the symbols people used. A symbol is something that stands for something else. For example, a flag is a symbol of a country. Symbols that reveal people's beliefs and values can be found in their architecture, art, and the objects they made. The desert region of Thessaly in Asia was once a lush area with plenty of wildlife. Humans may have lived there as long ago as 6000 BC. These people left behind thousands of pieces of rock art. Camels had replaced horses as a means of transportation. As Lahote publicized his findings, people wanted to learn more. They explored new rock art sites in Africa and found thousands more pictographs, rock paintings, and petroglyphs, rock engravings. After centuries of focusing on European rock art, people began paying more attention to African art. This interest opened new opportunities for archaeologists. Giraffes in the desert. A group of giraffes walk along the side of a cliff in Libya. Each stands between 6 and 7 feet, 1.8 to 2.1 meters tall. Photographer David Coulson, an expert on African rock art, first saw the carving in 1998, but the giraffes had been there for about 7,000 years. They were chiseled with such skill that they seemed to be in motion. Even though the area was now desert, the giraffes looked so real that they must have been part of the world where the artist or artists lived. Coulson was not entirely surprised. He had already found giraffes on a rocky outcrop in the desert near Niger's Air Mountains. The two 20-foot, 6 meters tall creatures, known as the Darbous giraffes, were carved 6,000 to 9,000 years ago. Other rocks in Africa's desert portray crocodiles, antelope, cattle, lions, hippopotamuses, rhinoceroses, and sometimes fish and river crabs. Like the rock art at Thessaly and Asia, they bear witness to the time when the Sahara was a region of seasonal rains and lush vegetation. As at Thessaly, archaeologists found other evidence to confirm the story told by the rock art. The desert hid bones of giraffes, crocodiles, and fish, as well as pollen and the shells of freshwater snails. Doors to the spirit world. Rock art is not only a clue to the physical history of a region or a people. Experts in rock art also search the images for any spiritual meanings that might give a clue to how the artists thought or what they believed. One man who studies rock art is David Lewis Williams, former director of the Rock Art Institute at Witwatersrand University in South Africa. Lewis Williams has spent decades studying the art made by the San people who have lived in southern Africa for 10,000 years. Recently, he visited a shallow cave in the Drakensberg Mountains discovered by his colleague Geoff Blundell. They had to squeeze their way past a fallen boulder that had blocked the entrance. The boulder had also protected A modern researcher shows how artists carved images into the Saharan rock using stone tools. How old is that painting? How do archaeologists date rock art? If the paint contains even minute amounts of organic matter, material that was once living, such as traces of blood or charcoal, they can use radiocarbon dating. This method can be used for samples up to 50,000 years old. Radiocarbon dating detects the amount of carbon-14 in an object. Carbon-14 is a chemical that is present in all living plants and animals. Once they die, it decays at a steady speed. It takes 30 years for half of the carbon-14 inches plant or animal remains to decay, so scientists can calculate the age of an organism by measuring the amount of carbon-14 it has lost. Most rock art does not contain organic carbon, however, so dating it is less reliable. Archaeologists have to rely on contextual dating. This is a method of estimating the age of an image from the age of other items found nearby, such as stone tools. But even objects that turn up in the same cave as a piece of art may not be linked to it. They may have been there many years before or after it was created. So, experts also look for other clues. These can be found in the condition of the rock or the style of art, which may resemble another work that can be dated. This rock painting from Tassili and Asia shows a woman who might be washing someone's hair. Cave from animals in harsh weather and help preserve the treasure inside. Along the cave wall stretched 231 images in a mural 20 feet, 6.1 meters long. The sand artists had shown humans, animals, and symbols in complex and unusual designs. Lewis Williams had seen similar images before, but never all in one place. The mural was so large and complex that it took more than a year to study. Some parts had 4 layers of paint. Others were so faint that the marks did not show up in photographs. Experts spent weeks making tracings of the images. Then they redrew the images in the laboratory to recreate the original mural. Humans become animals. Lewis Williams and Blundell were fascinated by numerous human-animal figures that appeared. The artists had emphasized their animal aspects, such as horns and hooves, and used in red lines fringed by small white dots to link the figures to other animals. Some images showed people with oddly shaped heads. The archaeologists guessed that perhaps the figures were shamans, healers who were in contact with the spirit world. Other pictures seem to show a shaman in a trace as he becomes an animal. Clues from the present. What did the paintings mean? What beliefs inspired their artists? To find out, Lewis Williams studied the work of German experts Wilhelm Bleek and Lucy Lloyd. They had visited the region in the 1870s and interviewed many San people about their traditions. Some San in the Kalahari Desert still practice rituals in which men go into a trance in order to enter the spirit world. Lewis Williams became convinced that rock art helped the San connect with the spirit world. He called the rock a veil between the material and spirit worlds. The images helped the San connect with the spirit world through cracks in the rock that seemed like actual openings into that world. Harnessing spirits. Lewis Williams discovered that the San believed the eland, a kind of large antelope, was sacred. They hunted it for food and thought that its spirit lived on after death. Painting its image was a way to show respect for the animal and its spirit. Some paintings used animal blood, as if the artist wanted the work to contain the eland's very life. What else will rock art reveal about ancient Africa? Archaeologists continue to study examples of rock art in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and elsewhere. The works are very old, dating back hundreds or thousands of years, but they often reflect even older traditions that may go back more than 10,000 years. Archaeologist Geoff Blundell traces images from the 20-foot, 6 meters long rock painting he discovered in the foothills of the Drakensberg Mountains of South Africa. A delicate detail from a sand rock painting showing a type of large antelope called an eland. Elands are the San people's most sacred animal and often appear in cave paintings. David Lewis Williams left and Geoff Blundell studied the images on a careful copy of the mural.